course of the presentation made in the morning, a lot of issues were raised on taxation, good governance. My former president, Mrs. Balogun, in her analogy, she was trying to support good governance before taxation. Our governor, before he left, he was trying to emphasize on payment of tax to be made before good governance is put in place. And my presenter here, he started with taxation. That taxation is the first law to be put on people. So I want us to avoid this puzzle of chicken and egg. Which one comes first? On taxation and good governance, I think this conference has to take it as a responsibility to resolve them. Which one comes first?
That was Professor Kabiru Dandago, Honorable Commissioner for Finance, Kano State, at the 19th Annual Tax Conference. You will recall that last episode, which was the first part one of our story of the 19th Annual Tax Conference, we brought you the responses of respondents to this all-important question: taxation and good governance, which comes first? That is our take-up point today.
It's very clear. The Constitution is clear. It's the law. Paying your tax is the law. And I feel like it's unfair for some citizens to pay who are taxed directly from their personal income taxes. You know, I feel like it's unfair for some others to say they will not be paying taxes while others are remitting directly from their income. What I always say is, pay your taxes so you have a voice to challenge government. That's the reason why everybody was silent when we're spending the petrodollars. Nobody, if there's no development, nobody complains, nobody has any issues. But once the money comes from your pocket, you want your voice, you will scream at the top of your lungs to get your message passed across to your leaders, to your reps, to your senators. So that is my reasoning.
The people who fought against taxation, the ransom cooters, the Agbekoyas, the Abarayot people, they paid their taxes. And it was because of that incident of paying taxes that they had the right to fight. If you go back to the history of the Agbekoyas, what happened? They've been complying. And then government said they were going to increase taxes. Now, they now said they have been complying. The roads to our farms are bad. Our goods are getting spoiled because we cannot move them out. Until that is done, we will not pay the increase. It is because they were paying, it is you that are paying that you will know where the shoe pinches. If the shoe does not pinch you, you cannot fight government. And I tell people, that penny that you pay, the penny that the other person pays, is the little drops of water that is available to government.
The taxpayers should pay tax before the government provides social amenities to them, the dividends of democracy. As we have seen in Ogun State, the governor is doing well. And so is in my state. Our governor is also doing well. He has provided social amenities to us, roads, schools, hospitals. He has renovated them. And it is because we are paying our tax regularly at the due time.
It's easy. The chicken and the egg. You need to pay your tax first. Then you can ask questions if there are no developments.
I would say, do not ask what your country will do for you. Do what you will do for your country first, and then you leave the rest to your country to do. You fly on roads to go to the airports. These roads were built with taxpayers' money. If you say because the government is not doing this, so you won't contribute your own quota, then you won't have roads, you won't have good hospitals, you won't have any infrastructure. It is with this, there is no government that can survive without taxation.
If you don't pay your tax, you don't expect any blessing from government in terms of development. But I think it is very important for every citizen, however young or old, rich or poor, that your first obligation is to meet the payment of your tax And when you pay that, you have this moral right to ask government what they have used the money for.
Although some hold it that taxation is the force that should come prior to the performance of the civic responsibility, because it's through the revenue that government will be able to build more roads, construct roads, build more hospitals, build public offices, and so on and so forth. But if you are going to hold that view, then it means that once we've started doing that, then once the government fails in its own civic responsibility, then the citizen must also cease from the payment of the taxes. But for now, government should have gotten enough of fund to build us all those things, to perform civic responsibility to its citizenry. So they shouldn't wait for another round of taxation. Let the government start now. We've seen many countries like United Arab Emirates where government don't take tax, but they provide them with many things, many infrastructures. It is infrastructure that actually attracts people to their country. So from there, once those are done, then government will now bring out the issue of taxes and more revenue will be generated. That's my own view.
Of course, the whole debate began at the paper presentation session at the conference. And as you presently see and hear, Mrs. Lawal had support.
My tax is meant to be paid on my income. If I haven't earned anything, then I can't be expected to pay taxes. So government should make sure that they provide its biggest spenders. So if they spend, people will have money. So there's a multiplier effect. And then you can now have the strength, the courage, the moral situation to ask people to pay their taxes. So I'm encouraging government to make sure that infrastructures are there to help people earn reasonably, and then we can demand taxes. We can borrow a leaf from Dubai, UAE, where they don't pay taxes, and the government provides the infrastructures, and we all know what has happened in those countries. More investments are coming in, and it keeps going, can only get better.
And this final one.
May I be indulged to lend a view that perhaps we understand that the chicken and egg situation does not actually apply to taxation. If we take ourselves back to the origin of society itself, by remembering the Thomas Hobbes state of nature, where it was brutish, short, and hellish, that the only right to live in a society, the essence of governance, is that we submitted our individual sovereignty to constituted authority to really help. That means one set of people who are dissatisfied by the survival of the fittest submitted their authority. And how do you submit authority? When we remember the scriptures, by paying tithes is to say that money is not the one that will satisfy your need, but Almighty, and you give the first 10% to God. How do you justify your existence in the society? By not contributing to that government, which was the whole essence of the creation of modern society in the first instance. So I think it's a binding obligation on the taxpayer to pay his taxes, and then government will reciprocate in terms of service delivery.
Very profound. We await your own reactions. Which comes first?
Every day, my people they for work. Some they do office work. Some get it them own business. So all of them want good road, constant power for better life. Whether now office work, oh yeah, pay your tax. Whether now your own business, oh pay your tax. If you want a better life, oh pay your tax. Now your civic responsibility, pay your tax. Better soup, now money cook oh yes. Nothing goes for nothing, my brother. If you want potable water, security and hospital for make life jolly.
That's right. Good roads, good hospitals, portable water, adequate security all come from taxpayers' money. Play your part in making Nigeria great. Everybody, small scale, big companies, entrepreneurs, do the right thing. Pay your tax. This message is from the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS.
Welcome once again. The program is Tax Matters, and we are bringing you the story of the 19th Annual Tax Conference, which was held in Abuja, capital of Ogun State, from the 17th to the 20th of May 2017. This is actually part 2. Last episode, we brought you excerpts from the papers presented at the conference on the theme Taxation and Good Governance, the Social Contract Imperatives. We recall that we ended the excerpts at the point where the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria presented its paper, which was presented on behalf of the president by Otuba Meshioye. It was on the psychology of the taxpayer. We begin today on the psychology of the tax collector.
Yes, on the corporate side, yes, I'm in disagreement with the Manufacturer Association because they complain about multiple tax. Yes, there is indeed multiple tax. But from my own view, from my own perspective, the corporate people, the limited liability company also try to avoid paying the appropriate tax. I won't call them tax evaders because I happen to have a different life as a banker before I became the chairman of Ogun State Internal Revenue. So most of these companies, I know them, I'm very familiar with them. I will recollect when I deal with them, when I go to their factories, the financials they give me and the people I see on ground are completely different when I'm reviewing their papers as a tax collector. There are several examples that I said, I know when I visited this company, they had expatriates on their staff. And when you look at the payroll, no expatriate is listed there. And when you look at their financials, they are reporting losses. Of course, the financial they gave me as a banker, they can't report losses, otherwise I won't give them money. So these are some of the things that we see. Yes, the Manufacturer Association believe less compliance and more social responsibility on the side of the government will allow people to pay voluntarily. Yes, I do agree, but there are instances where we need to balance the two. I would say on the informal sector people is where we need enlightenment, and this is where we need more voluntary compliance. But on the corporate side, I think we need to put more emphasis on, whatever penalty we have that we can impose on them, and less on asking them to be a good boy or a good girl.
Talk about the psychology of the tax collector, the mindset of the tax collector. Executive Chairman, Kwara State Internal Revenue Service, Dr. Muritala Awodu, also presented a paper on the theme of the conference, Taxation and Good Governance.
What most of us do is not recognizing the fact that we have to give unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar. We say that I started my company, the government was not there, I provided electricity, I provided security, I provided this and that, so government have no right to collect tax. Forgetting that the government had actually made the platform available, that's why you could provide all this. For you to survive and exist in any environment, you have what is called civic responsibility, just as the government also has its own responsibility to provide social services. And both complement each other. You play your part, and then you expect the government to play their part.
I will have loved to see from the paper the effort the state government is making to empower the people economically with a view to producing more and more taxpayers. Yeah, you may not be just talking about getting taxpayers into the net. Who are into the net? If you don't make income, you don't pay tax. Almost all our laws are emphasizing on taxing income, taxing resources. So if you don't have anything, you are not to be expected to pay tax. To actually transform the state from crude oil base to tax base, people need to be empowered economically in one way or another. And that is what will make them to feel proud to pay tax. Let us go to the grassroots. how do we make people in the rural areas to be part of the economy? How do we make all the people that are assumed to be poor or perceived to be poor to be part of the economy? So the moment you become part of the economy, you'll be a proud taxpayer. And then it is then that will be proud to enlist you into the tax net.
The way we can develop in the country, the way I see it, is through the instrumentality of the Joint Tax Board. We should be able to strengthen that organ in a way that we can benefit from each other. We should be able to come together and get the best out of each other and make sure that we move seriously from the oil-based taxation to the IGR-based taxation. And one of the beautiful things which the discussant mentioned, the professor, is that we need to use taxation to increase economic development rather than killing the business, rather than making the people becoming poorer. If the people become poorer, they will not have the capability of paying taxes.
Executive Chairman, Lagos State Internal Revenue Service, Mr. Ayodele Subar, presented a paper on taxation and infrastructural development in Nigeria. The paper presentation session was chaired by former president of the CITN, Alhaji Kamaluddin Adigun.
There's a relationship between adequate tax collection and infrastructural development, which will lead to economic growth. If every taxable adult pays the personal income tax due to a state, the states will not have to depend on the federal government for monthly allocation or sharing from the excess crude account.
Mr. Subar's paper was discussed by his counterpart from Kano State, Alhaji Sani Dambu.
Basically, Mr. Ayo gave history of taxation in Nigeria right from colonial, pre-colonial period, colonial, pre-independence, post-independence. And we understood that amenities or infrastructures were provided by the then colonial masters. He made mention about so many projects across the regions. Basically, the Wahala started after we neglected the reliable source, that is the tax base, and migrate to resource base by relying on crude oil. After the advent of petrodollars, people were full of money, government, citizens, and everybody. Everybody was happy then. And that's what gave room for corruption. Because resource money is not my sweat, it's not your sweat. Nobody cares to put eye and find out how the money is being spent, whether it was spent judiciously or not. But tax money that has been collected from you and I, everybody put eye to find out how his money is being spent. Now that we have proceeds of crude oil, good governance first, every sitting governor should utilize the minimum he has to provide infrastructures to convince the citizens of that state to encourage voluntary compliance. When you enhance sources of revenue generation, eventually there will be adequate tax, and if properly used, that is the good governance we are talking about, then it will lead to growth and development.
A paper was presented on budget and open government by Mr. Ben Akabueze, Director General Budget Office of the Federation. The paper was presented on his behalf by his technical advisor, Mr. Alfred Oko. The paper was discussed by the Honorable Commissioner for Budget and Planning, Ogun State. Chairman of the paper presentation session, Mr. Wole Obayomi, summed up this way.
From the presentation by
Mr. Hoko, we could see that there's still a lot for government to do. I'll just make a few additional points in terms of specific items that you can relate with, which government just needs to do. First is timing of passage of the budget itself. Now we are 5 months into the new financial year, and the budget was only just passed last week. Even then, we don't know when it's going to be assented to by the president or the acting president. I believe that we need to set a goal in this regard and perhaps legislate it such that at a certain point in time in the year, maybe by September, the executive arm of the government should submit the budget of the Federation to the National Assembly. And by 15 December, National Assembly should also enact a legislation in that regard. Until we have that as a binding obligation of the government, we are not likely to see a change as to the timing of finalization of the budget.
The 19th Annual Task Conference also played host to universities from across the country for the second edition of the CITN National Tax Quiz Competition. Winners of the second edition of the CITN National Tax Quiz Competition were awarded mouth-watering prizes at the gala night, at which Chief Commander Chief Ebenezer Obey was on the bandstand. Prizes were also presented to winners of other competitions and to supporters of the cause of taxation in Nigeria. Tax Matters asked participants for their impressions of the 19th Annual Tax Conference.
The conference has been very wonderful. The topics that was delivered in the conference and the presenters and the organization is very perfect. It was very educative, and I'm sure the reason why you see a lot of people this night stay to the end of this program is because everything was efficient and perfect.
What are you taking away from this 19th Annual Tax Conference?
Very, very many things. You know, the technical section is one thing, which is very, very rich. And of course, the mixture of people from all over the world. You have representatives from Ghana Institute, you have from other countries here, you have our members, both from Internal Revenue Services of all the 36 states and the Federal Inland Revenue. And practitioners, of course, we are well represented.
The 19th Annual Tax Conference has been a success. We give glory to God for that. The event has been very peaceful, and there have not been any critical issues.
And from the chief organizer, chairperson of the planning committee.
I would say that this conference has been the most remarkable conference we've ever had. This is the first time in the history of Chartered Institute of Taxation that a sitting governor would attend our conference, would open the conference. Not only that, we had the blessing of former President Olusegun Obasanjo. So it started on a good note. The attendance has been very impressive. We didn't even expect the large turnout, maybe because we are bringing it to Abeokuta City for the first time. So everybody turned out. The attendance is impressive. The planning, everything has just been remarkable. It has been the most, the most attended conference since we started our conference 19 years ago.
And of course, the final word from the president and chairman in council of the CITN. As president and as a participant at this 19th conference, what are you taking away?
Well, my takeaway, I will base it on the theme of this conference. The theme of the conference is taxation and governance, the social contract imperatives. What we mean by this theme is that there are two sides to a coin, the governed, and also the government itself. But when we talk about the government, we are now thinking of government as the spending authority of the taxes that are being collected. I'm not talking about government in respect of the collectors, the tax authorities, because the tax authorities, they are not the spenders of the tax revenue that they collect. They collect on behalf of another level of government, who is now the spender. They will now determine how much the money is going to be spent, and I'm referring to the governors, because they are the ones that are the spenders on the behalf of the state as well as the local governments in local government areas.
do believe that it is not too early to say see you at the 20th Annual Tax Conference. In the meantime, please continue to watch Tax Matters and continue to pay your taxes as and when due. Like they say at the FRS, it pays to pay your taxes. See you next week. Have a blessed week ahead.